refresh your browser right now so that the English option shows up, and then of course select it. And then what you'll also need to remember to do is go down to the player window and mute the audio in the player window. Otherwise you'll hear the Spanish delivery over the top of the English translation. Okay, I think that does it for our housekeeping and leads us to our first presentation. Cristián Izquierdo, apologies if I didn't get that right. Cristián Izquierdo is a partner at Izquierdo Lehmann Architects. His work has been exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art Galleries in New York and in Georgia. His publications, his work has been published in Detail and Casa Bella, as well as GA Houses. He's received the Minimum Work Award for Santiago and House of the Year Award in 2017, Architectural Record Design Vanguard Award in 2020, and the AOA Medal of Honor for Outstanding Young Architects in 2021. His presentation is Central Plans After the Dome. Welcome, Cristián.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. No, or not to see you, to be with you in some place in the cyberspace. It's a pleasure to be here. Today I'll present 4 houses that we have done during the last 5 years, more or less, and present them in the context of daylight. And daylight regarding the issue of the central plan. That's why that's the title of the dome. The central plan, since antiquity, has been conceived as a model of architectural integrity, or maybe the paradigm of architectural integrity, as Rudolf Wittgauer put it, if my memory doesn't fail. And integrity during the history of Western architecture has been conceived in different ways. The classical notion of integrity, as in the Renaissance, like Palladio, meant a semantic, syntactic unity, where the wholeness was conceived as Alberti thought of it. Let's say that all the issues regarding the art of building could be organized in a scale from necessity through commodity to pleasure and beauty. This is what Alberti called congenitas. The modern world, the world that arose in the French Revolution, conceived architectural integrity in a different way, as, for example, in this hospital project by Bernard Poyet. They conceived integrity as the composition of what Jacques Lucan called a closed order, governed by pure syntactical rules. In this case, as a functional device organized through an eloquent screen, which is detached from the cultural or significative aspects of this project. Let's say we don't know how this floor plan looks like or should look like, but it should work, and that's the important thing. This, let's say, subjectivation of integrity, or the conception of integrity as something which is conceived from the interior of the own self and not as something shared in a culture as a whole, is something that Semper put it or conceptualized in a radical way as eurythmy or eurythmy, as a perfect regularity of character, in a sense, and I'm quoting right now, in a sense that they are two worlds within worlds, because they isolate themselves completely from the universe, are self-sufficient, and by their form express the possibility of existing without the outer world. So we can see that this central plan has been conceived as a model of shared meaning for a common world, to a model of something which is express the possibility of existing in the inner self without the outer world. Then the project of the avant-garde could be conceived as an anti-integrity project, as something that should restitute art and life, or a common significance to things that could be shared for people, or shock for people. Dada and the collage. And then again, architects, as Colin Rowe and Fred Kötter in Collage City, started to attach compositional methods, let's say collage, to ethical and political values. As in Collage City, they think that collage stands for democracy. We think with Peter Berger and Robin Evans, among others, that there is not a link between syntactic integrity with semantic integrity. So we look for a contemporary understanding of the central plan and the notion of wholeness it implies. And we have developed this series of houses. Some of them, this was the first one, and these two are during project right now, and I'm going to show you today these four ones here in the middle. And I'm going to explain them, trying to emphasize the communicating vessels between semantic and syntactic integrity, now that we know that there's not a link between these two issues. In these houses, as you may see, they are compact plans with a lot of perimeter. Because one of the main issues of the central plan has been the thing that they have little perimeter to the outside. So one of the key issues of the central plan has been the illumination of the core from a dome above, as we saw in the Villa Rotonda project. Whereas in these houses, we look for the multiplication of the perimeter of the house to illuminate the core from different sides, incorporating skylights in a wider system of multiple relations with the outside. This is the first house that that I'll show you today. I did it just when I came back from studying at Columbia University, and it's in the middle of a dune where we can see the highway here in the. So it's in the middle of nowhere, but related to the highway. So it had a problem. One of the main issues of the design was to keep it safe from possible robberies and so on. So we thought of it as a house in a cross-shaped plan that could be open or closed depending on its use. And since so we designed these doors in the perimeter in a very careful way, and they open to the inside. So what happens that when the house is absolutely opened, since this is a cross-shaped plan with 4 patios, when the doors are open, you cannot pass through this patio to this patio because these doors act as a barrier, and you just see the outside frame by doors. And you can walk through just the middle of the house, through the core. But if you close the doors, you can walk all around the house, and the house, the dormitories, the bedrooms becomes much more or much less private, because you can walk from one dormitory to the other through the perimeter and not being seen from the outside. So when you look to the outside and you are looked from the outside, Your bedroom is absolutely private. When you close it, you can use the house in different ways. All these houses modulated in a module of 90 centimeters. And so we use two different models here. We have a central kitchen, but then we have two rooms that act separately, and they are like a motel. They are in a way universe in themselves, detached from the common area. This section and the patios, they in a way belong to the room which they are attached to, as we see in this section. So you enter the house through these ramps, and then you can walk all around the house. When the house is open, it's like in a way like a temple, and when the house is closed, you can walk from one way to the other, and it works like a discotheque in a way. These are the patios closed. And in the middle, we placed the stove as a kind of pagan altar, in a way, because they liked a lot to cook. And this is the thing that the center is illuminated from above, and the modulation of the center doesn't match the modulation of the perimeter, so you are always looking like in diagonal. And when you look from the outside to the inside has this dramatic remarcation of centrality. But also the four patios, they are like a center in itself, or detached, or they can work detached from the other center. These are the doors that we designed very carefully. And that house, in a way, opened us a way of thinking of this center in relation to the perimeter. But in this second house, we left the patios open, and we placed in the middle a squared place to be that when this and then the bedrooms, they are like bubbles detached from the patios. So all the patios belong to this central area. And when you close these doors, they are like rooms that doesn't exist, and you can walk around the patios as one huge common area for the whole square. So you access through the patios, and the patios in a way mediate between the surroundings that now they are all planted, and the center of the house. The center of the house again has this skylight that works like a clock, like a clock with a light. I don't know how to call it in English. And then you have this relationship with the outside that is always diagonal, so you can stroll around the house in all the directions, and it's not that it has just one direction. And whereas the center of the house is very concave, the perimeter of the house is absolutely horizontal in order to be like a plinth to contemplate the landscape. So again, there are these differences that are mediated between the center and the perimeter that are treated in a different way. And then we designed these beautiful beds in order to be able to put another bed that you can take apart, and it's not shorter than the other ones. This is the thing that I was telling you, that you always cross through the interior and the exterior like a huge terrace, the house as a huge terrace with 4 bedrooms embedded. And this house has a very similar floor plan that works very different, because it's almost the same floor plan, but here the rooms, they don't have a wall in here, but they have a window. So the patios, they belong also to one of their own bedrooms. So this is like a mix between the other two houses. And we incorporated this huge terrace because this is a very windy place. And we thought of it as a place for protecting from the winds, and the wind comes from here. So we thought that these two patios should be protected from the wind. But then and all the house was thought for as a central area that could be protected from the wind. But it had a very beautiful view, and I thought if the house is thought as a shelter and all the decisions are thought for achieving that, what if we add one moment of the house to experience the dramatic position of the house against nature in a dramatic way? And we put this terrace, that it's a place for being maybe 5 minutes sometimes, but to experience the landscape like in a intensive way that is accessed through this ramp. So again, this is so since most of the daily life should occur in this interior place, we thought of it, or we wanted that this place had a natural light, very as an exterior place, as like that light comes from everywhere. So we put a small skylight in each one of these squares, and make it float as something completely detached from the rest of the house. So the bedrooms, they are open to the terraces, like as part of the patios, and then the center has these small skylights that gives this very plain light as being in the outside, but you are on the inside. And we, of course, we had to draw a lot because we thought that we were going to build this with a machine, with a CAD/CAM machine, but in the end we did it with 4 craftsmen. So we had to do these drawings in order to build it by hand. And this is the opposite of the house, where you contemplate the exterior, the wind, and the beautiful sunshine. And of course, it is all about pleasure in the end. This is the last house where the program was organized around 3 private areas that were put on the extremes of the house. And it was organized through 3 parts and not 4. And all the common areas we tried to melt or to put the outside areas, let's say the terrace and the barbecue area and the entrance, as part of this common area. So it looked like a kaleidoscopic way. So since this section is very simple, it's like this, but when you put it with 3, it starts to act dramatically in very different ways. So in this house, which is very simple from the outside, when you enter, you enter to this core that emphasizes the organization around 3 parts. But you don't see the sky, but the light comes from here. And what I was really interested in was that this was in a suburb with no particular focal points, but with a lot of sky and with beautiful trees. So we left these triangles open when the triangular plan intersects one to the other. So you contemplate the sky and the trees surrounding through the lens of a floor plan, or through this triangular organization, or through these triangular windows. And then you see one room to the other, and the party begins. So this direction is very simple, but in the other, it's very complicated. And then you get out. So if classical unity depended on the definition of its nucleus, unity today, I think, is played on its edges, on its relations to the outside, and on the possibility of mediating with these diverse forms of otherness that surrounds the project. Thank you very much.
Experience of the place, light at the edges and at the center. Clearly, the central theme of your architectural approach is light as a form giver to architecture. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking more with you at the question and answer session.
Thank you very much.
Okay, up next, we have José Fernando Gómez. And before I introduce Jose, I want to remind you that he will be presenting in Spanish. And if you would like to use the Interprify menu, it's in the top right corner. And you may need to refresh the menu if you don't see an English drop-down. But please feel free to join in English if that's your preference using Interprify. And also don't forget to mute the audio in the player where Fernando's voice will be coming through in Spanish. So, José Fernando Gómez, José's voice will be coming through in Spanish. José Fernando Gómez is founder of Natura Futura Arquitectura. He's obtained nominations within the Americas for the Americas Award at the Pan American Biennale in Quito, and the exhibition at the Architecture Festival in Bali, Indonesia, and at the Architecture Festival in Biennale in Valparaiso, Chile. And he's working on a research proposal presently that decodes urban peripheral city identities. His presentation is Invisible City, the Identity of Suburbs. Hola, José.
Con ustedes lo que se viene dando desde otros territorios. Para nosotros es sumamente importante conocer nuestro lugar de trabajo. Somos de una ciudad satélite de Guayaquil, en el país Ecuador, en la cual estas ciudades son de tránsito, son ciudades... Hola, hola. Hola, hola. Ok. Entender el territorio. Estoy tratando de observar si se ve la presentación.
Okay, there's just a little technical problem, so we just need a moment and we'll get it clarified and we'll come back and restart. Yes, thank you. So it has been quite quite an interesting day so far, and we're going to roll with the punches. What I was excited about for this session is that it kind of brings all of what we've been hearing in each of the other sessions together. In this case, with examples from the Americas. So we've heard about light and health, and we've heard about computational design, and often we've had questions about, well, so how do we bring this to fruition in reality in real built spaces? So I'm excited about what we've heard so far and what we're going to hear coming up about architecture in the Americas. But I think, okay. Okay. So we'll do the restart, and hopefully everyone is found with the little pause. You had a little extra time to find the translate button. But without further ado or delay, I will welcome Jose.
Ok. Nosotros somos desde Babahoyo, una ciudad satélite de Guayaquil, en el país de Ecuador, una ciudad de tránsito. Son esas ciudades que son marginadas de la gran metrópolis, ¿no? Son estas ciudades que quedan en las afueras, estas ciudades que trabajan a partir de un orden que siempre está manejado de políticas públicas con muchas falencias. Es una ciudad que se ha crecido desde lo empírico, desde la construcción desde los maestros de obra, entendiendo muy bien nuestro territorio, entendiendo muy bien nuestras economías circulares, nuestras economías flotantes. Entendemos la arquitectura desde la transgresión. Cuando hablamos de transgredir es cómo utilizar la vereda o la banqueta o la calle como una extensión de espacio público. Entonces, para nosotros es muy importante entender cómo estas periferias se van conectando con la ciudad de una forma, digamos, ni tanto elocuente, sino de una forma como que para el que no quiere que se vea. Son estas casas o estos lugares de las ciudades que están totalmente tapados para que el usuario o la persona que visita la ciudad no la vea. Entonces, para nosotros era muy importante entender la técnica de construcción que se está dando empíricamente, entender todos los procesos que generan estos proyectos que surgen desde una realidad totalmente distinta a las realidades de las metrópolis, ¿no? Entonces, para nosotros es muy importante conocer nuestra mano artesanal, nuestra tradición local de construcción, nuestros materiales, y creíamos desde el principio que la arquitectura no puede ser un oficio sin que no haya un acto activista. Entonces, para nosotros entender de que teníamos que crear un espacio que no solamente funcione como una oficina de arquitectura, sino que también funcione como una casa, que se generen cosas en lo que no había en la ciudad. El tallercito para nosotros es como que es un punto de producción que no solamente es un espacio para recibir al cliente, sino es un espacio de experimentación continua que nos permitían ir explorando los materiales. ¿Por qué las paredes siempre se vienen haciendo como tradicionalmente se hacen? ¿Por qué no podemos cambiar un poco el juego? ¿Por qué no podemos encontrar nuevas formas de intervenir a la ciudad desde lo interior, desde que ya no solamente tienen que hacerlo los políticos, sino por qué el arquitecto no puede comenzar a gestionar procesos que nos generen casas que salgan desde lo particular y que se vuelva un poco más público, ¿no? Entonces la oficina se vuelve una galería de arte, se vuelve un espacio de confluencia de muchos ilustradores, fotógrafos. Tratamos de gestionar nosotros como arquitectos festivales que conecten un poco la arquitectura con las artes. Entonces, ese es como nuestro primer punto de trabajo, y luego de ahí es importante cómo vinculamos la arquitectura con una ciudad en la cual no hay referencias arquitectónicas. Entonces, esto es lo que se viene construyendo. Edificios sin que respondan al clima, que sin respondan a un lugar, a un contexto, a una realidad. Cada vez más se hacen estos edificios llenos de vidrio que nos consume mucha luz o electricidad a nivel colectivo, y esta necesidad de ocupar siempre todo, ¿no? Esto es lo que no está bien y es lo que se viene haciendo más en nuestras ciudades. Y más que nada esto, ¿no? Es cómo estamos haciendo nosotros desde la arquitectura y desde la construcción ciudades que no responden a una realidad. Entonces, para nosotros es importante poner como ejemplo un proyecto que se llama La Casa Entre Bloques, que era esa necesidad de desvirtuar o de desconstruir los muros dentro de la ciudad. Y de esa forma, una fachada o un frente deja de ser ya la ventanita con las puertas y se convierte en un filtro desde la ciudad, por un grado desde una inseguridad también, pero por otro lado también de una necesidad real del usuario de no perder un poco esa visibilidad con la calle. Entonces, ¿cómo se hace la arquitectura aquí? Nosotros llegamos al lugar, habían bloques para poder generar losas y dijimos, no, ¿por qué vamos a trabajar con lo mismo de siempre si todos estos bloques se puede construir una envolvente, se puede construir un espacio de habitar? Entonces, con muy poco dinero y con muy pocos recursos, se puede lograr una habitabilidad. Para nosotros era muy esencial ir descubriendo y experimentando todas estas esencialidades del material y de la arquitectura, de cómo la luz natural se la puede aprovechar y cómo la luz nos ayuda a poder generar unas nuevas atmósferas con estos nuevos materiales y esta nueva disposición de materiales. Entonces, es importante de ver cómo las dinámicas comienzan a dejar de ser estáticas y comienzan a ser más activas, comienzan a ser mucho más con movimiento, ¿no? Entonces, para nosotros es importante entender cómo manejar la luz a partir de una fragmentación del frente. Ya el frente deja de ser un muro lleno y comienza a virtuar. Entonces, para nosotros estos pequeños proyectos que ayudan a generar ciudad, también ayudan a generar un pensamiento crítico a partir de lo que estamos haciendo con la arquitectura. Este era un patio en desuso de la propia casa y dijimos, ¿por qué no utilizar ese espacio para una producción? Entonces ya el usuario ya no solamente habita la casa, sino que es una casa productiva, ya comienza la casa a tener una producción que le ayuda a generar una economía familiar. Entonces, la casa de antes que era pública, de antes que era privada, perdón, ahora es pública. Entonces, así mismo con los equipamientos, ¿qué estamos haciendo con los equipamientos urbanos en las ciudades latinoamericanas, que son ciudades pequeñas? Prácticamente se alquilan casas para poder hacer un gimnasio, por ejemplo, pero en este terreno nos tocó tener un desafío de generar un gimnasio de 3 pisos durante 3 años en un terreno tan angosto. Entonces, para nosotros era muy importante entender cuál era ser el concepto al final. No queríamos trabajar con vidrio, no queríamos trabajar con aire acondicionado, queríamos trabajar con lo más sostenible posible, con la ventilación cruzada, con sistemas pasivos, en un equipamiento, era nuestro desafío, ¿no? Entonces, este gimnasio urbano se genera por 4 pisos, pero se va generando de acuerdo a la necesidad de lo que se requiere. Entonces, la arquitectura ya no es un elemento de muro en nuestro frente que nos determina, digamos, ese desasosiego o ese aislamiento de la ciudad a la calle. Ya comienza a repensarse un poco nuestro frente urbano y comenzamos a vincular mucho más directo hacia la calle. Para nosotros es casi como una obsesión esta forma de vincular la arquitectura con la gente y con la calle y con nuestros vecinos. Cómo nosotros con materiales del lugar, con materiales de la zona, entender cómo funciona la luz, el viento, podíamos trabajar estas dobles alturas y esta conectividad y vinculación desde el horizonte y lo vertical con la ciudad. Entonces, es importante ver y revisar todos los puntos claves que nos determinen cómo abordar un proyecto que se permita abrir y cerrar de acuerdo a cómo esté trabajando el clima. Entonces, es interesante de ver lo que está pasando ahora en Latinoamérica, porque no es más bien repensar de recursos, es un repensar de espacio, de lo que tenemos a la mano. Es una necesidad básica de lo que podemos hacer desde lo poco que tenemos acá con una arquitectura que piense en lo global, que piense en nuestras necesidades, ¿no? Cómo utilizar las cubiertas, que siempre son cubiertas abandonadas, y cómo repotencializarlas para poder conectarlas con la ciudad. Entonces, es importante y es sumamente importante cómo diversificamos los centros urbanos. Esto es otro proyecto en el cual se mezcla la casa con la productividad de una forma horizontal. Una familia joven quería tener su propio trabajo dentro de su casa, haciendo edificios de uno, otro piso, y nosotros le planteamos por qué, para qué. ¿Por qué no lo podemos trabajar horizontalmente? De esa forma ocupamos menos espacio de escala y trabajamos con nuestra gente, con nuestras personas, y vemos cómo podemos exponer un material que siempre ha sido marginado o denigrado como el ladrillo. El ladrillo en nuestras ciudades siempre se lo ha tapado, siempre se lo ha enlucido, y para nosotros era como decir, ¿por qué no podemos mostrar un poco la belleza del material trabajando a una escala más doméstica, en la cual sea una casa en la mitad y la otra parte son oficinas, locales, escuelas de producción? Entonces, el mismo sentido del Ignacio, espacios que se puedan abrir y cerrar, una arquitectura que piense a partir de la luz natural, pero también un sistema de ver cómo podemos nosotros habitar con esa luz. Es importantísimo ver esa vinculación del proyecto con la calle, y también cómo nosotros podemos otorgarle a la ciudad pequeños espacios y áreas verdes en la cual dentro de nuestro sistema político casi no se siembra árboles. Y no se siembra árboles por el tema de mantenimiento, porque no hay recursos. Pero nosotros lo podemos hacer desde lo privado hacia lo público, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, es importante el tema del manejo de la técnica, de la estructura, de cómo esa estructura se conecta con una luz y se conecta con la materialidad para poder generar atmósfera. Y se trata de eso, de poder entender cómo funciona la arquitectura vernácula con unas alturas altas, pero contemporaneizándola a la realidad de ahora. Cómo estos espacios pueden ser habitados desde la comunidad, desde los niños y desde la ciudad. Entonces, para nosotros, la autogestión y la gestión también es sumamente importante para generar proyectos comunitarios. Y esto es un traslado desde la frontera. Nos trasladamos y nos encontramos con esto. Pareciera un basurero. Esto está dentro de un centro urbano de la ciudad. Nosotros, junto a otras fundaciones, conectamos y vamos al político y le decimos en qué forma podemos gestionar procesos comunitarios para poder hacer algo con ellos. Y el político nos dice, esta es la solución. Entonces, nosotros como arquitectos tenemos que aprender a ver de que no solamente siempre va a ser la solución lo más fácil y lo más práctico como esto. Le dijimos que no, así no se puede habitar. Esto no es digno para una familia que se dedica al reciclaje. Y comenzamos a gestionar materiales con empresas privadas y con fundaciones. Y dijimos, la planta baja tiene que estar abierta y la vivienda tiene que convertirse en la parte superior, moviendo paredes, siendo flexible, adaptándose de acuerdo a lo que se necesite, con una estructura netamente de lo que teníamos en la mano, que era la madera, es lo que nos donaban, y entender la arquitectura no solamente como un hábito de decir, estamos trabajando para otra persona, sino como cómo puede ser esto un punto de producción ya urbano, un punto de ciudad, ¿no? Entonces, trabajar con mano de obra comunitaria, qué pasa con las manos de obra de los policías, de los bomberos, de los oficiales, cómo podemos establecer toda una organización colectiva con nuestros veteranos que saben de madera, con nuestra gente que quiere ayudar. Y luego de eso nace la comuna. La comuna es más bien un resultado del entender cuáles son nuestros procesos como ciudades latinoamericanas. Entender cuál es nuestro clima, por qué generarle estas celosías que nos permiten tener ventilación cruzada, que nos permiten tener una luz mucho más amplia, una luz mucho más horizontal, una luz mucho más energética, que yo le llamo, ¿no? Entender cómo con la arquitectura también se pueden generar elementos inmobiliarios urbanos, convertibilidad, elementos que se puedan mover de acuerdo a lo que quiera crecer la familia, elementos que podamos entender de que la arquitectura no debe ser estática, debería de estar siempre en un grado de movimiento, porque los seres humanos también tenemos esa necesidad de movernos, ¿no? Entonces, qué bueno que nuestro elemento también se vaya moviendo de acuerdo al uso. Y en la noche comienza a generar unos anuncios desde la arquitectura misma, trabajando con alguna técnica dentro de la celosía. El reciclaje para nosotros es fundamental porque genera un orden y genera un pensamiento y una reflexión. ¿Qué está pasando y qué hacemos nosotros por el mundo, ¿no? Entonces, esto es ahora, esto es después de unos 3 años de construcción, se la fue a visitar y nada, como para concluir la presentación, entendíamos de que nuestros recursos como ciudades son el río, por ejemplo. Normalmente en Babahoyo siempre se ha habitado el río de una forma no adecuada, hay casas flotantes y nosotros cada vez que caminamos por ahí vemos que cada vez están más deterioradas, pero el gobierno las quiere sacar porque da una mala imagen a la ciudad. Entonces, Don Teodoro es uno de los últimos pescadores que tienen un equipamiento de flotabilidad dentro de este río, y nosotros como arquitectos, al momento de trabajar con la gestión y con la colectividad, dijimos qué podíamos hacer frente a ello. Hicimos una lectura de un patrimonio de la arquitectura y dijimos, ok, la arquitectura siempre ha sabido vista desde el territorio, desde la tierra, ¿no? ¿Qué pasa cuando comienza a habitarse el agua? Que creo que para nosotros es como que el primer paso, como algo acuático que va y se hace ya más terrestre. Entonces, era entender cómo funciona ellos desde hace 100 años que vienen viviendo ahí, vienen flotando, que vienen buscando de cómo ganarse la vida y generando estos equipamientos para pesca, trabajando con el río hacia la ciudad para poder generar economías internas sobre él. Entonces nosotros pensamos un sistema y generar una sistematización trabajando en 3 fases. La primera fase es rehabilitar un equipamiento, la segunda es trabajar con sistemas de inodoros secos, de trabajo de sistemas de laboratorio para poder ver cómo utilizar los desechos orgánicos para no contaminar el río. Y el tercer fase es, por ejemplo, ya generar viviendas productivas. Entonces, estos son procesos que nosotros entramos al agua, trabajamos con ellos, trabajamos con la comunidad. Está ahí el dueño a la derecha, que está sin camiseta. Él es parte principal de la construcción y entendíamos de que era como un pequeño micromanifiesto, decir, wow, miren la ciudad al frente, ¿por qué estamos marginando y por qué no hacemos algo para el otro? Era esto, ¿no? Era de poder trabajar con la técnica, de poder trabajar con la arquitectura de un impacto mínimo, pero de gran utilidad y gran necesidad para el que la habita. Entonces, para nosotros es todo un gran, digamos, una gran importancia de poder entender la arquitectura desde otras formas que hacer. Ya no es lo que se nos viene enseñando desde la universidad, de que tiene que ser realmente para un cliente específico o para alguien que te la venga a pedir porque la necesita. Sentimos que deberíamos de ir un poco más allá y trabajar con la gestión para poder lograr grandes cosas. Y con esto lograr sembrar semillas para poder decirle a los jóvenes que vienen atrás y a los niños de que la colectividad es parte fundamental de la arquitectura. Y con esto me despido, espero que podamos entender y podamos reflexionar a partir desde otros territorios que hay vertientes y hay muchísimas posibilidades de dónde intervenir. Un abrazo y saludos desde Ecuador.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, José Fernando Gómez. Beautiful work. It's so clear how much people love your architecture. For our final presentation of the symposium, we have Rick Joy, founder and principal of Studio Rick Joy. He is an important contributor to the ongoing discourse on conceptual and sustainable design. His work expresses innovation and exactitude in modernism and reflects a unique sense of place. He has a long list of amazing awards, and including being inducted into the Interior Design Hall of Fame, most recently in 2019. He will be sharing with us Identity Through the Grounding of Experience in Place. Welcome, Rick Joy.
Hello. How do I share my screen? Okay. Can you guys see it all full screen? Oh, okay, good. I thought I would just take the time, I have like 15 minutes to actually focus on daylighting. And to start, I'd like to share that I live there, and that's a ball of fire. And the daylight is incredible here in Tucson, Arizona. I don't know how to advance. I don't know Teams. I can't figure it out. I don't know. Now there's no arrows. There's just a timer. Sorry, I wish I knew how to do more. Hey, Claudia, I can't advance this. I don't know how to do it. No, there's no arrows, or I can't. This doesn't. Okay.
Okay, well, clearly we're having just a couple of technical issues, but no fear. I'm sure I can hear in the other room. The team is very close to getting the issue resolved. And I've just been noticing some of the questions that have come in. And Jose Fernando, I don't know that you'll be able to join us. I know that we were losing some connection. Oh, okay. Well, we will get right back to Rick Joy.
So am I back on? Okay, so you see the map of California and Mexico and Hermosillo and Tucson, and that's where we live, the Sonoran Desert. But what's amazing when I'm trying to focus on daylighting is that in the American Southwest, the daylight is stunning. And what you often see is just a orange sunset in the magazines and stuff, but it's actually a beautiful white light. We do that. And so I think if you really want to focus on daylighting and just light in general, I like to teach people, the young people, that being comprehensively observant is a good start. Granada. The little things you can find just on the edges of life. Beautiful work from a guy with a grinder and a golf cart in Charleston, South Carolina, an artist. Look at that. And you know, in the United States, we say that everything's the biggest and best. And so we have the world's largest rose bush, apparently. Some fish traps in Mali. Standing next to these fish traps is a beautiful, the darkest skinned person I've ever seen with indigo in his eyes, white eyes, and a indigo wrap on his head, with a double-breasted suit catching little fish, and he made these traps to do it. It's art. Snapping lines and trimming trees in Paris. Colors, light. Ice crystals on my windshield in Tucson, which is pretty outrageous. Sugarcane dripping on me when I'm reading the newspaper at night. The quality of light on the floor at a gallery in Venice, Italy. And I tend to take 200 or 300 pictures of these kind of things. Daylight. Light. And then we're lucky in Arizona to get something like this at the end of the day, most days. But one thing that one of my close friends helped me put together these 6 little slides of the tactile qualities and the colors and the surreal nature, the smells and all of that in the canyon trips that I did until I was 60. I was addicted to this stuff. But it comes out in the work. That turned into that a few months later. And then on the same canyon, this is called Hell's Gate, Tonto Creek in the middle of Arizona. And 8 months later, it designed that. And so, you know, when I'm talking about being comprehensively observant means a lot to me, because I think if you just pay attention, you can find depth with daylight. And this is another canyon. That's another canyon. First house I ever did. And another canyon, our main office. So I'm trying to go pretty fast. So considering nuanced lifestyle and experience firstly is super important to me. I don't really care about or want to think about form first. So I'm just going to explain this one little house. And so it's a little site in Tucson. And what I discovered is that there's the perfect light event experiences for each of the 3 major program spaces. This one's for dining room, living room, kitchen. This one's for master bedroom, and this is a little den. And so what happens is the sun starts to set, and this is a 7,000 foot high mountain. I can't translate to kilometers very well, but it's really high. And so once it starts going down, the shadows trace across Tucson. And I'm trying to only focus on daylight. And what happens is that then suddenly the city lights come up, and then only the mountain is lit. Daylight. And then again, for the master bedroom, the sun rises over here, and it hits the tip of the Tucson Mountains. And it's like a glistening sounding, you can almost hear it, of bright light. And that's the view. And what happens is once the sun hits that, and it eventually backlights all of the ocotillo and saguaros and other cactus, the needles and everything. It just becomes really just a brilliant experience with daylight. And I leave this in for students out there who are maybe watching. This is when the sun goes down. I think the saguaros all do the Macarena. And so the house turned into this. 3 separate volumes that frame the views, instruments that frame the light show. And sorry, VELUX, but these are little skylights that I made myself on this house, little strips of wood. But the important thing is that you walk on the ground and reorient yourself with nature between these buildings before you go into the daylight experience of each of these buildings. Now, I can say that all of those skylights are VELUX. just trying to promote because you guys invited me. So that's the little house in Vermont that we did. And then I think it's important to be conceptually insightful and giving in all of the work. I mean, I learned this from reading books about Lou Kahn. I'm not old enough to have met him, but you know, you can imagine a daylighting experience where the clients ask you to make a perfect place for them to have a cocktail at sunset. And so it's a longer story than I can tell in 20 minutes, but, you know, we do get, it's not like Northern Sweden, but we get like 5 minutes of this, what we call the blue hour. And so daylight is an important part of my practice and life. There's no lights on that pool. That's a reflection from the blue light from the west sun setting. And then in opposition, helping Walter live in the shadows of the Tucson Mountains at the Desert Nomad House. Or, you know, I have a good friend, Jeff Day, who's Nike Global Women's art director and a phenomenal photographer, came to Tucson and took these white light photos for me, that I always noticed when I was riding my bike around the mountains. And then there was a moment, talking about daylight, where I was given the opportunity, my firm, to do a chapel in Austin, Texas. And I had this idea that if there's a possibility, we could make it as if some entity, I'm not religious, so I don't know, but or a person or God or whatever would be pouring divine light down onto the altar. And the great thing about it is that it's just always there. There's Jeff Day's picture again. Study after study after study after study to try to find a way to get divine light onto the altar, and that's what happened. Daylight. And so I'm pretty strongly influenced by the American Southwest, you know, minimalist artists. And this is just a corner of my office, but obviously there's like a very strong connection to James Sherrill. He was a buddy of mine. Johanny Plasma says it best to me, that it should be more about the verb than the noun. The act of looking through the window versus, and also walking through a threshold versus just making a beautiful window or a great gate. There's time for that later. Think about that first, daylight. Made friends with Olafur Eliasson when I was teaching at MIT. And he taught me that light really only comes to life when there's a participant, when there's a visitor to the art that he made here, or to the, you know, to the sun show at Tate, or if nobody's in the room, it's not art yet. So considering light, daylight, or whatever, this is a hallway in Taos, New Mexico, where the only light in this hallway, except for the one light on the bull sculpture, is coming from the ambient light from the adjacent rooms. And you can have fun with it. Like, this is a fiber optic Navajo rug that we found an artist in Stockholm that could make for us. Side light, Jan Vermeer. Means a lot to me. And you can make a room by just putting the window in the right place. Daylight. Whoever's sitting there reading the paper and the other person is making the coffee, you're going to look good in that space right there. Sanders, the great artist from Germany, had these beautiful pieces that were just polished drywall. And you could go up and see your ghosted figure. And we did that at that chapel I just showed you. Lots of references to Donald Judd. And so daylight in my most current projects, these are belvederes on a project on Long Island. But that I'm on Geary. And one of the things you get to do when you get, you make some architecture and stuff, is you get to go do some stuff that's fun in the world. And I gave a keynote lecture at the Alto Symposium many years ago. And the problem is I had to speak right after James Turrell, which was not easy. But that's me and Yanni Palazma making a friendship in a stave church where there's not even one piece of metal. All wood, even the hinges and locks are wood. Sometimes get to go teach in Australia, Glenmarket. Glenn had just given us these beers because, you can see Rick's face, Rick LePasteur. It's Peter Suchbury on my left, on my right. And the work was so horrifyingly bad that Glenn's just like, you guys need beer for this one. And then finally, if you've read the text that I sent, I'm not following it. I don't like to read while I give a talk, but this is the project in Princeton. And we did all these buildings. The only thing that's missing in this drawing is this should be yellow. It's a 250-foot long canopy. This is all Stephen Hall. The Blair Walk, our transit hall, transit plaza, and a Wawa store. Too long a story to tell in this short context, but one thing that I do love to share is that people go over and rent the country club over here and walk over and do a processional and do their vows in our little train station. And somehow I clicked on the wrong thing, so I don't know what's going on. But I'll have to just leave it at that.
Well, that seems like
well, somebody just cut me off, I guess. That's the thing.
That seems like a reasonable place to stop then, Rick. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed your architecture from a distance. I grew up in the northern latitudes of the Americas, and then I spent time in Seattle. But I've always enjoyed seeing your work and understanding the contrast. So we're going to transition directly into some Q&A discussion. We will unfortunately only have 2 of our presenters joining us for the Q&A. So Rick and Cristián, I think, will be joining us up here on the screen just in a moment as well as Rick. But before I start in with questions for Rick and Cristián, I want to just share a couple of the comments and questions that were shared from the audience about José Fernando's work. So first, one individual said, being a Latin American, I really congratulate you, José, for the work that you've done. So many political and economical issues that you've addressed, and it's a struggle to give people this kind of dignity. So I thought that was very nice to share. The other one was, José Fernando, so beautiful to listen to your presentation in Spanish, and I had to interpret it with my eyes only. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hear the English translation, and my limited language, I could only follow a little, but I did enjoy the presentation with my eyes. But this viewer says, your way of expressing our Latin American roots is inspiring. Okay. So we have, oh, wonderful. We have Cristián and Rick both with us. So I wanted to start with a question about process. You both have described some really beautiful work and shown some poetic examples of how you're using light as an inspiration, and in some cases as a form giver, or maybe other cases as an experiential giver within your architecture. But I wonder if you might talk a little bit about the process that you go through to understand either place or time or both, and maybe pull some of those threads with regards to the projects that you shared with us. And I'll invite Cristián to go first.
Well, first of all, hi Rick. It's an honor to be in this dialogue with you. I remember when you came to Chile for the first time, I took you to dinner. It was an inspiring lecture. Regarding the process, we usually start with something that has no form. Even if our projects and floor plans looks like very formal, we don't start from that, and we don't have the partie or something that we need to attach and doesn't change. It's different. We usually start from thinking of relations among different people, different programs, different things, light, of course, materials, and how all these issues could relate one to the other. I usually start also thinking of the position of furniture, even if then always nobody respects how you put furniture in your plans. But for me, it helps me to think of the size of each part of the project. So I start like thinking with furniture, the different sizes that things need, and then start to think how all these things could be, if they should be close or far away one to the other. For me, it's very important to keep things tight and close one to the other. And then when the program or when the organization is kind of clear, or I have an idea of organization or relation of one thing to the other, we start thinking of constructive modules that could apply, because we are very much into prefabrication and wooden structures. But that comes after the relationship between different places and different rooms, and the relationship with the exterior. So first comes organization, and then construction, and then we go BIM, and we start kind of solving the puzzle as something that should fit. But I think that the project should end expressing the organization in the most eloquent way. And expressing an organization, of course, needs to take into account all the different realms of human life, light and ventilation and so on. But the expression should be the outcome of a tough process. And that's why, for me, if things are formal, it's because you achieve that formality in order to express something which is not formal and which comes before that. So order can only exist as an outcome of those previous stuff, and then it's always contingent and not definitive.
Thank you, Cristián. And Rick, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, mine are going to be a little more short in that the goal and the process in our work in the studio with Joy is to offer more of a lifestyle proposition than a building for my clients. And so step 2 is to bring as much nature into their lives as possible.
Nice.
That's the true luxury.
Nice. Yeah, and I think you expressed that in some ways where you were alternating between sort of the bright, hot, as you called it, fireball, and then maybe the cool and air and shade of a canyon, and how that also translated into your architecture in the indoor space. So I love the notion of bringing nature indoors and sharing nature with people.
It's been a fun life in architecture in going for those long canyon trips and letting that just flow into influencing the work.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, the next question I have is about a little bit about scale. So, Cristián, you presented homes that were, at least by my consumption of what you shared, relatively similar in scale. And Rick, you presented some projects that, translated scale from small-scale residence to churches, and then even at the very end talking about your contributions in the campus. And I wonder, again, with the emphasis on light and daylight, and maybe that's a spatial scale or a temporal scale, I wonder how you approach smaller scale projects or spaces within a building versus the larger scale projects with regards to light. Is there anything that you'd care to share on that, Cristián?
Well, we work in projects of different scales. We are right now working in larger projects, but for the purpose of this presentation, I just presented these 4 houses in order to talk about one particular problem. But I prefer thinking of measures before scale. With Revit, with BIM, I think scale, the scale you print the plans is not that important as the measure of the constructive elements and the sizes of the spaces. And of course, we try to think about them with the same approach, the different sizes. 1 centimeter is as important as 1 meter, as 100 meters, and as 1 kilometer. And we try to think precisely of those different measures in any scale.
Yeah, no, that's nice. I often talk with my students about the benefit of light, if you will, is scale-less, because we can study little models or big models, and we can still learn a lot. But of course, the experience of it, maybe there is some nuance to pull apart. Rick, would you like to share your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I only shared like the really small projects that we've done, and I have to indicate that we just finished a one and only resort in Mexico with 178 standalone buildings. We did all the interiors, from the mescal glasses to the chase lounges to the everything. And it's a project that's very oriented. It's in the middle of a jungle, right on the ocean, and a jaguar preserve and all that kind of crazy stuff. And so, but it's very daylight oriented. So half the rooms, there's 115 of them, half of them are tree houses living in the canopy of the big trees, and the other half are grounded, but they have giant skylights looking up into the canopy of the trees. And so there's polo clubs and all that stuff. And talking about scale, I mean, we're all standing with our shoulders a little bit forward these days because we just can't believe we finished that. It just opened last November. And I was just there 2 weeks ago and doing a photo shoot. And it's polo clubs and all that stuff. And I think, you know, I've kind of downsized. It naturally happened. We had 37 people at one point. And now we're like at 14, and I just think, and I didn't lay off anyone. Everyone went home to their respective countries, Italy and Spain and Portugal, and all to make babies and stuff. No, it's
that's good. That's
if you're
good.
if you're from Chile, you want to go
really,
back to Chile to have a baby. You're just going to have 11, aunts and uncles helping you. Rather than being in an apartment in Tucson, social distanced and stuff. And so that was a huge scale jump for us. Amangiri was big, but this one was just really, really big. And so I've kind of caught myself and declined a bunch of stuff. I just declined 4 Seasons in Tulum. People read Desert Works and the new one, Studio Joy Works, and they want to come to Tucson to work with us, thinking that they can work on something like Desert Nomad House or the Catalina House, and or even Amangiri. And so we're only doing houses right now.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Well, we have just a couple minutes left, and so I want to give you a chance to share a story of surprise. So, light is it's so, on one hand, astronomically, we should know exactly where the sun is at any given moment in time, but there's always some complexity. And I wonder if you might share a story of surprise, pleasantness, and an experience that either you had in one of your buildings that you weren't expecting or that you heard from one of your clients. Cristián?
There are some things that you do as an architect and that you don't know how they will work. And we did a project of 5 houses in a row that looks like one building. And we did these holes in order to get natural light to the center of the plan and have these row houses to feel that you have natural light coming from the 4 sides and not just from the 2 fronts. And I didn't know how that was going to look, how was exactly the light going to light the walls. And at some point, I remember going in and see the sunlight coming from 2 stories up, from 1 story up, like in through a small hole. And it had this kind of Tadawando shaded light. And I was gladly impressed because the things that I thought in theory, were actually happening in practice. And I realized that I was becoming an architect because I think this craft is very, it's a long procedure. And it was one of the first moments when I realized that what I was thinking in the project was actually happening in reality.
Nice. Yeah, I love that reference. I might becoming an architect. I feel like it's a practice, and it's a lifelong process. So, Rick, we have 2 minutes.
Well, I love your answer, Cristian. We all have surprises in architecture, and I think the only thing I can think of right now is that we did this project you can see on our website called Tennyson 205 in Polanco, Mexico City. And I'm always trying to bring nature into every space that we design.
Nice.
And so 5-story building with 3 light wells with hanging plants. Beautiful landscape architect down in Mexico City, Hugo Sanchez. And I just didn't quite believe that the light would arrive at the first floor from 5 stories up. And it did. And we're talking about Mexico City, 8,000 feet, most polluted city in the world, all that kind of stuff. And it's glorious. Every room has nature, except for the closets. And it worked. And so that's my surprise.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank you both. Actually, Jose Fernando Gómez, thank you. And I'm sorry we lost you there at the end. Cristián, thank you. Rick as well. It's been a pleasure to learn a little bit more and have a moment together to share your wonderful work. Thank you so much. That wraps up our Daylight in the Americas section, and therefore also brings to the conclusion the Daylight Symposium, the VELUX Daylight Symposium for 2021, the 9th Daylight Symposium. I just have a couple of summary thoughts to share, and maybe a parting message to leave you with. After I stop here, however, we will have a Build for Life wrap-up that will just be maybe 5 minutes from now. So if you want to join us for the Build for Life wrap-up, please stick around. But in the Daylight Symposium, we've had topics on light and health, computational design, education, the pandemic, glare and controls, connection to the outdoors, and of course, examples of daylight in architecture from Europe, from the Asias, and from the Americas. It's an incredible sort of trip through time and space and scale, and it's been a really fascinating experience for me. I feel so lucky to have been able to spend the time with each of the speakers, so thanks to all of the speakers. I also want to say that there were several times throughout the session where we were getting kind remarks to the folks doing the Interprify. So thank you so much to all of the folks doing the interpretation for the thousands of viewers that we had around the world for this event. And finally, I'll just say the Daylight Symposium had moments that were incredibly detailed and analytical, and then pulling back to inspirational and ephemeral. We had multi-scalar, right? We went from microbes to metropolis. We spanned the globe from the Arctics to the equator, from the Asias to the Americas. We had poetry, we had parametrics, and what I think I've learned, though I felt like maybe I had this as a foundation, now I feel like maybe even a better understanding of how daylight is universal, and that the wild and variable, dynamic, messy, beautiful light is part of why I came to architecture in the first place. A good friend of mine says that good architecture should make you feel like you are profoundly cared for. And what I think I've learned is that, to me, daylight in indoor environments feels like love. So we'll just leave you with some parting words. May a view of nature fill your room, a breeze of fresh air fill your lungs, and the light of sky breathe the wild of light into your life. Thanks so much for spending time with us at the VELUX Daylight Symposium.